endurance because they are magic or stealth focused will not only have less health than a player who does train endurance, but significantly less health. The chart I'm showing on screen demonstrates this principle. A Breton starts with 30 endurance and Nord starts with 50. If the Breton player ignores endurance until last, he will be at a significant disadvantage in terms of health compared to the Nord player. Normally this isn't significant, it's not a multiplayer game, so balance doesn't matter. In fact, this is exactly how it worked in Morrowind as well, and it's widely considered not to be a major problem towards that game's leveling system. The difference is that because
Hi,
we have
Salafa.
Oblivion scale to both the Nord player and the Breton player at exactly the same rate, and arguably the threat somewhat outpaces characters who don't level endurance, that health disadvantage becomes an extremely noticeable problem. The way this problem manifests is that players who don't min-max their health are going to start noticing enemies that can one-shot them. This chart now reflects the characters if they efficiently level their endurance every level, meaning that every 2 levels they will increase the health gain per level by 1 point. Yes, dividends are a major factor in my investment decisions, and I have made spreadsheets to predict the growth of dividend investment. Min-maxing in Oblivion will require leveling endurance by 5 points per level until you reach the maximum of 100. In order to gain 5 endurance points, you will need to train an endurance skill 10 times per level. Endurance skills
Forgot that I still have
heavy
the
armor,
fucking
armorer, and block. By controlling the rate
packed
of
in one
levels
that I
with
gave
heavy armor,
myself
I'm
for my
effectively
thumbnail.
ensuring that each level will
Should
raise my
probably fix
endurance
that.
by 5 points. At this point, you may be breathing
You
a
gonna
sigh
watch
of relief
this?
that
Okay,
I now
have fun.
explain the
You can
problem.
also,
Well,
while
don't,
you
because
watch,
there
it's
simply
great. You
isn't
get
a
to
fast
listen
way
to the
explain
YouTube
this
video
problem,
that I'm
and
listening
we are
to.
far from done.
And also
Endurance is
music
only
from
part of this
pre-sequel.
Solving in part the amount of damage
Because
we
I
can take from
turned off the
monsters.
music from this
The other
game.
half is the damage we do to monsters. It's all well and good to be able to take hits, but if we can't do damage to match, then the fighting is going to turn into a slogfest. So, you first have to decide what the primary mode of combat you are going to engage in is going to be, which is 3 categories: magic, archery, and melee. I'd rather put these in their relevant sections, but I have to touch on them here because Oblivion is so interconnected, and
I
this
can't tell
problem
if
really
you're
does absolutely touch
serious
everything
or
in
not.
this game. Magic is simplest. There is no way to increase magic damage via leveling. Yes, really. In Morrowind, skills and attributes are irrelevant to the raw damage it does. The way you do more damage with magic is to make more powerful spells. The way you
Hey, did I
successfully
fix
cast
it?
more
I
powerful
did.
spells is
Let's
to be
go.
better at the magic skill, attribute, luck, and to have a high fatigue. This was changed in Oblivion to address
Oh,
these
okay.
things.
Yeah.
Spell chance has been removed.
I kind of
There is
figured
now a
that.
100% chance
It's
of
some
success
guy.
when casting
Hope this
spells.
helps.
That change by itself in Morrowind would mean the limiting factor of magic would be magicka, so to compensate, Oblivion added a tiered system of magic to the game. For instance, if you don't spec in destruction magic, then you'll have a novice level in the skill and be unable to cast the apprentice level spell, Flame Touch. Having enough magicka is not a factor in being able to cast the spell. It doesn't matter if you're the apprentice or the Atronach or an Altmer or a Breton, if you don't have the skill, you can't cast that spell. So in summary, if you want to do more damage with destruction magic, then you need to level destruction up. Every 25 levels will unlock another tier that does more damage. Willpower is not a factor, and now all it does to influence your damage per second is how fast magicka regenerates. Unless you pick the Atronach sign, in which case willpower is
I'm having fun.
Intelligence will determine your maximum magicka, which can throttle what spells you can use, but since magicka regenerates now, having a large pool isn't as big a factor as simply having enough. Alright, so, problems. First, the tier system means that you'll be doing the same amount of damage with spells for a long time before seeing a significant change each time you level. Meaning, if you want to be able to really use magic, you're going to need to use it constantly to make sure it's keeping up with the enemies of the world. Second, destruction and restoration. The 2 skills which can do damage directly are both willpower skills, meaning that if you want to raise intelligence efficiently, in addition to endurance, you're going to need to use an intelligence skill a lot, as well as raise your magicka enough to use those better spells. Third, spell costs in Oblivion are way higher than they were in Morrowind.
Yeah, whatever you
Because
say, man.
magicka now regenerates during combat. If you build the exact same character I did between games, in Morrowind you'll have around 175 magicka, while in Oblivion you'll have around 300. In terms of 2 spells to do
This
same
is the
amount of
thing I'm
damage,
farming.
however, things
I'm just
wildly
farming
differ.
a different.
In Oblivion, the
I'm
Flame
farming a
Touch
rare
spell
part on
does
it.
25 points of flame damage on touch, costing 46 magicka at destruction level 33.
This
The
is a
exact
perfect
same
version,
spell
just
in
without the
Morrowind costs 12
part.
magicka at every destruction level, as magicka cost in Morrowind is determined by spell effect only and does not factor in skill levels. Now, you might say that the systems aren't directly comparable, and
Works
that
pretty
would be
good.
correct. However, what we can compare is the number of casts each character would have. The Morrowind character with 175 magicka would be able to cast Flame Touch 14 times, while the Oblivion character with 300 magicka would only be able to cast Flame Touch 6 times. The difference stems from the fact that, as I said previously, magicka in Oblivion regenerates, unless the player selects the Atriodax sign. If our character doesn't select that sign, then they will only have a paltry 150 magicka or 3 spell casts before they need to regenerate more. Fourth, yes, there is a fourth point. Remember that skills level based on how often you use them. So the old death spell I used in Morrowind is now a bad idea because to train your destruction skill, it's better to cast the 3-point damage effect up every time in combat than the 300-point damage effect once. Not that you would be able to cast that spell anyways, and the limitation of training means we can't boost our magic skills to get up to that point, so it's just not an option. The main takeaway is this. If magic is the way you want to play, you'll have to use it constantly at a difficulty level that allows you to cast a lot but not take too much damage. You'll likely want to efficient level intelligence and willpower in addition to endurance. Oh, we'll get to that. Next, archery. Archery damage is mainly determined by the cumulative weapon rating of the bow and arrow, which itself is determined by agility, marksman, and the durability of the bow. You can see it displayed by this formula. You got all that? It's not actually that complicated. So, if marksman is the way you want to do damage, then you can simply focus on using bows, which will improve your marksman skill, which in turn improves your agility. You want to raise your agility 5 times per level in addition to endurance, which means you'll probably need to supplement your agility by using sneak and security. Like destruction magic, hitting more often is more important than hitting hard. So I would avoid the temptation to use poisons or to even use sneak attacks, which may seem odd, but it's important to remember that sneak attacks do not in fact level up your sneak skill, and you'd be doing more damage, which would mean less hits, which would mean less levels. Finally, melee combat. This includes blades, blunt weapons, and hand-to-hand. Melee combat is similar to archery in that damage is determined by weapon rating, which is determined by strength, blade, or blunt, and durability. Hand-to-hand has a separate formula, but otherwise functions the same aside from durability, obviously. So for melee fighters, leveling strength and your skill choice as fast as possible is important. You would focus on using your preferred weapon as purely as possible, as well as trying to land as many hits with it as possible without dying, so no stealth or power attacks and no poison. You would also want to use a one-handed weapon as they will swing faster and thus level quicker. Melee weapons take the most amount of uses out of all of the offensive skills to level, but are also the easiest to spam to level. You can land 2 or 3 blows in the time it takes to cast a spell, and 4 or 5 in the time it takes to fire and hit a target with an arrow. Melee fighters have the added benefit, or potentially detriment due to leveling their preferred armor class when fighting. Oh yes, friends, the well goes even deeper. See, it's possible to level a skill too quickly in Oblivion. Confused? That's normal when I tell you in a game where leveling your skills is the primary focus that it's possible to level too quickly. See, heavy armor is the main attribute we're leveling in order to raise endurance to get as much health as possible. The problem is that once we hit that 10th heavy armor level, attribute points will stop raising for the next level. If you realize the implications of this, the migraine will soon set in. This is why I call the system evil. In order to maximize the number of attribute points we get per level, once I reach 9 out of 10 skill ups, I have to take off all my heavy armor. If I don't, then I may potentially have a dirty level where I don't maximize the attribute points. The only way to know is to level up, so why not just save and do that? Because the level you have to rest, and they took away the ability to rest in the wilderness, so to level you have to find a bed. This is why my Morrowind follow-up video was footage of me naked running around Oblivion punching clan fears. I have to leave Oblivion to level, and since I can't rest under leveling, well, the armor has to go. Now, does that sound extremely tedious and stupid? That's because it's extremely tedious and stupid. If you want to absolutely level efficiently, then you need to keep a spreadsheet of your levels at the start of each level and track each skill up and keep track of the attributes you're raising. And you can't use skills that you aren't currently trying to raise, so if you aren't raising intelligence this level, you can't use alchemy. If you aren't raising agility, you can't use lockpicks. It's evil. It's absolutely evil. Your choices are to either ignore the broken system and pay the price, or starve yourself of content, or torture yourself trying to min-max.
You know how just do it was the worst that could happen.
The fourth school of thought, the Forbidden School. Welcome to Macro Hell. Even this school has its flaws, but it can greatly make up for the weaknesses of the other schools. The downside? It's boring. And, well, there's other problems. Not everything can be macroed. Believe me, I've tried to make a macro to automate selling items to merchants. It didn't work. Most of the spells you use to train require spellcrafting to acquire, which is seldom known gated either behind paid DLC, which cost a couple real bucks and several thousand gold, or after going through the lengthy process of getting into the Arcane University. Another problem is that if you skip over too many levels, your gear will be left behind in terms of damage, and you can't leave the room, at least if you do this while min-maxing. I'm mostly just registering while doing this, but it is something I had to babysit. And, well, it shouldn't be necessary. This is grindy. I have to mention it because if I don't, people are going to leave comments. Hell, they'll probably give up halfway through this section and leave comments anyways, complaining that I should get a rubber band and just swim into a corner for a few hours. At this point, you start to reach into the territory of just using the console to level up and bypassing the system entirely. This is a game. I want it to challenge me, and I want to overcome that challenge. I'm not leveling for the sake of leveling, I'm leveling because I want to earn a more powerful character with better abilities. Emphasis on earn there. There's no satisfaction in using the console, and there's equally no satisfaction in using macros, but I used macros anyways because that's what the leveling system encourages. Trying to exert control against the system may leave you feeling hollow spiritually, but that's better than getting gangbanged by ogres for several hours. So, let's summarize the 4 schools of thought. Ignore the leveling and try to have fun. Get murdered in a cave with 25 trolls. Pick a level and stay at it and miss out on a bunch of content. Min-max like crazy and pull all your hair out when athletics increases on an off level and you realize you have to walk everywhere. Cheat or cheese and begin to question why you're even bothering to play the game in the first place. So now that I've laid out the problem, how do we go about solving it? First, let's look at the other Elder Scrolls games. I don't remember much about leveling in Fallout 3. But I do remember that New Vegas used a flat experience system, which you would earn from killing enemies any way you want and making quests. When you leveled, you could then allocate points into the skill levels. Every 2 levels, you would get perks, which could then be invested into attributes, or you could raise attributes at that one doctor. This system takes away the level as you use it aspect of Elder Scrolls, which is part of the Howard Trilogy's defining style, so I certainly wouldn't advocate removing the core idea. Skyrim attempted to solve the pitfalls of Oblivion by removing attributes and replacing them with a flat choice between raising health, magicka, or fatigue every level, which is the classic Bethesda strategy of implementing new ideas poorly and then axing all the old ideas that got messed up as a consequence. Is your scaling system causing everybody to complain about attributes? Better remove attributes instead of fixing the scaling system, which is funny because Skyrim still made an attempt at fixing the scaling system anyways. I would still rather go back to the handcrafted level design philosophy of Morrowind, but I will acknowledge that Skyrim was at least an improvement over Oblivion in terms of scaling. Speaking of Morrowind, how did Morrowind solve this leveling problem despite having almost the exact same core idea? Simple. With trainers. Here's an instance where the smallest, most minute of changes ended up having a drastic impact, and most people don't even realize that this right here was the biggest failure of Oblivion. You can only use a trainer 5 times per level.
That's nothing compared to Morrowind.
Sounds innocuous, right? In Morrowind, there was no cap on the number of times you could use a trainer, meaning if you had 25,000 gold, you could soar from level 1 to 20 in no time. Of course, the only people pulling that off are going to be experienced Morrowind vets. The reason why this is significant is that Morrowind has the exact same efficient leveling philosophy as Oblivion. It's just for min-maxers who want to make the absolute best character possible. It is in no way necessary to min-max to complete Morrowind content. In fact, it's very easy for Morrowind characters to cross the power threshold and become unstoppable monsters, even at the maximum difficulty, just through playing the game. In Oblivion, however, the trainers become necessary due to the aggressive scaling. Only for whatever reason, there's now a limit. If I had to guess, I figured the designers didn't want players leapfrogging level brackets or they would get left behind in terms of gear. Which is a funny notion because in addition to restricting the number of times you can use a trainer, trainers are also more expensive per level to use, in a world with even less access to gold than Morrowind. I mean, yes, the economy of the game breaks around level 12, and you can always use exploits to get easy money, but if you play the game by the game's rules, it can be difficult to get enough money in the early game to consistently utilize trainers. Especially if the way you plan on making money in the first place is from questing. The number of overall trainers has also been reduced. There are almost as many trainers for Longblade in Morrowind as there are trainers total in Oblivion, and that's
But
not a
I'm
joke.
pretty sure I
there
didn't
are
sneeze.
95 Longblade trainers in Morrowind. Just that one
But,
single
thanks.
skill. And there are 105 trainers total in Oblivion. The unofficial Elder Scrolls pages lists every single trainer in Oblivion on a single page, while each skill in Morrowind requires its own page to list all of its respective trainers. Most of them aren't as long as the Longblade page. Like, Axe only has 18 trainers, but still, that's a lot more than the 5 people in Cyrodiil to train your blunt skill. So we have less trainers spread out over a larger surface area. The total number of trainers you'll have access to is cut down another 21 trainers in order to get the services of master trainers because you have to have skill level 70. I actually like the master trainer quests. I think it's a great idea to make the relationship more personal, but it means you really only have 4 people in Cyrodiil who can train a skill for you. They also cut down on the number of skills individual trainers can train. So when you meet masters in Morrowind, they tend to be good at other stuff as well and can offer training in those skills. Then you have to
What are you
factor in-
even doing right now besides nothing?
I have the amazing ability to consistently arrive at a city at night, meaning I have to wait until whenever the trainer's scheduled to start offering their services to train and then track them down, because if I wait in their house, it'll be considered trespassing. And then there's the cost, which is 10 times the skill level. And sure, you can use Drain skill to cheese trainer costs, but you also can't delete spells in Oblivion, so I didn't use that exploit. So, overall, most people probably don't mention trainers because most people don't find any use.
Like on your PC area you found.
After all, their jobs can be outsourced to a macro. Their best use is training skills that either can't be macroed or even with a macro level at a glacial pace. Prominent examples being
Oh, on your
Mercantile,
but-
Restoration,
oh.
and Athletics. And, well,
Okay.
there's a limited number of uses for trainers. I'd guess most players doing a general playthrough get to around
So what, are you
level
just like-
25 or 30, higher if they try to 100%.
Yeah, I'm not
So
gonna.
most players
bullshit.
can only get 125 to 150 levels from training, assuming they somehow have the gold to afford it at the low level. That might sound like a lot of easy skill ups, but that will probably only end up covering like half of the grindiest skills in Oblivion. Trainers are an area that got even worse with Skyrim. There's even less of them, not just because of the skill crunch.
What
but
you
there's
should do
just
instead
less
of
per
that
skill in general,
is
and the
play
Skyrim
Borderlands
player now lacks
1
control
and
over
get
when
to
they
max level,
meaning getting
and
the
then
most out of
farm
their limited
Bonehead.
use requires some serious gymnastics. Skill books are another option. In Morrowind, you'd mostly use skill books to finish out the final few levels of a skill that is most expensive and most difficult to level. Arguably, their usefulness in that respect means they're worth saving until much later in the game, and
I totally
recommend
shot
taking
that guy enough to
advantage of
die,
them.
but
Saving skill
whatever.
books in Morrowind is easy,
Is it solo
at
health?
least on PC, because you
Yeah.
can pick them up without reading them. Well, you can't do
Fucking
that
guy.
anymore, although the ability did return in Skyrim if you ordered a follower to pick the book up for you. So I'm guessing the idea is that skill books are meant to be an immediate level reward for an area, but that idea doesn't work. Okay, so in Oblivion, I need 254.9 experience to level Restoration from
I've heard that
99
level
to
sucks
100.
balls.
Doesn't sound bad until you find out that each restoration spell, regardless of effect, gives you 0.6 experience. That is 425 casts of restoration spells. Or I can get my hands on the book Withershins or 2920 Rain's Hand and skip all that. If I had used that at restoration level 25, which requires 54 casts to raise to 26, then that would obviously be wasteful. Morrowind played with the idea of giving skill ups as quest rewards in the Tribunal Temple and House Sylvani quest lines in the form of skill books. I think rewarding levels in a faction with a clear skill focus, like Magic skills in the Mage's Guild, is a good idea. The only problem then is messing up an efficient level because you got points in an attribute in an off level, or accidentally qualifying the player for a level up too early. Do you see what I mean when it's all interconnected? I was going to say the Grey Prince giving you a spell effect to
I've
raise
not
your
beaten
skills
any
instead of
extremes that
training
I
you normally
disliked.
was an oversight, but now
Haven't beat that
now
many
I'm not
levels
so
that I
sure.
disliked,
Speaking
although
of skill books,
Kuiper,
there are
you
less
get
of them in
Kuiper
the world.
there,
Many
for
are
sure.
randomized loot, and some are difficult to immediately identify. This is a problem Skyrim somewhat addressed, actually. In Morrowind, each skill book would have 3 to 5 fixed locations they could appear in. Sometimes more, sometimes less. Only once did a skill book only appear in one location. They were never leveled loot, and they were always more valuable than non-skill books, meaning identifying them was easy. Skyrim is pretty similar in this respect, actually. 3 to 5 versions of each skill book with fixed locations and clear values. Oblivion messed this up in several ways. There are usually only 1 to 2 versions of each skill book. Many books are available through randomized loot, meaning a stealth player might find a combat book. Some books, like A Dancing Fire Volume 7, are only available in randomized loot. Book values are also not consistent. Most of the time they're valuable, but sometimes you get a book like The First Hold Revolt, which will blend in with other book values at its low price point. For the coup de grace in leveling, you have to consider all of this information, all of it. All of the formulas and XP values and charts and trainer locations and different philosophies and essays. You take all of that and you try to cram it into an Oblivion playthrough. You'll forget to use a trainer here, you'll accept a dirty level there. At some point you'll probably break down in macro a couple levels or just turn the difficulty slider down to just try and experience the world that we haven't even really gotten to yet. And you'll realize you did all this to get a character that can kind of handle enemies at medium difficulty without making you want to gouge your eyes out. out and check yourself in at a mental hospital. You'll look to the sky and wonder how a benevolent being could permit such an atrocity to pass QA. I know it's a meme to say Bethesda doesn't playtest, but I seriously cannot imagine how Bethesda let this system slide. Did nobody play the game for more than a couple hours? I love the Making of Oblivion documentary because it shows level and world designers, but do you know who it doesn't show? The guy responsible for this. Wait, no, it does. He's right there. He's hugging Terrence Stamp and showing off how big his cock is for getting 3 celebrities in the game and calling it a star-studded cast. And the E3 demo. We'll get to that later. What, did you think I wasn't going to mention it? So we're wrapping up the arena now, and we get to its one and only real quest, which is optional. The Grey Prince requests we go and investigate his lineage. He's far too busy standing in place and cutting up this target dummy to do it himself. Now, one would think that given this is literally the only quest to go outside of the arena, that it would be in any way complicated. Nope. Go to Crowhaven, get a journal, come back. I had to kill a vampire to get that journal, of course, but it's actually optional as the quest doesn't require his death to advance. That's fine. But then Agranak won't say anything either way if his father's left alive or slain. Oh yeah, Lord Leviticus here is his father, which semi-explains the Grey Prince's pale complexion because by implication he's half vampire? Alright, so the book, Notes on Racial Phylogeny, seems to indicate that orcs, for whatever reason, can't bear children with the other races of Mer, or men. Even though orcs are supposedly Orsimer, but also goblinkin and apparently beast folk, although that last part's ESO lore and thereby not canon, it's also left ambiguous and open with the idea that most people would try to keep their half-orc children a secret. So we've got Agranak, who appears to be pale-skinned, more than likely because he's half-Imperial, half-orc, but also apparently has enhanced abilities compared to other orcs. Even though that could boil down to either conjecture, a misinterpretation of his skills as natural-born talent, or some byproduct of being part of 2 generally pretty martial races. Or it's half-vampirism, who can really say? Well, I can. He's distressed at the news of being descended of a vampire, so that probably indicates that he hasn't been feeding on people this entire time, even though he is an arena fighter and lives in a place called the Bloodworks. He has no weakness to the sun, although I guess photosensitivity could be in play, but then again, that's a pretty bad condition to have if you're an arena fighter. And he doesn't turn to vampire dust when he dies, but maybe half vampires don't. The real point of the story is simple. The Grey Prince staked his entire identity as a fighter on having some mysterious legacy behind him. It's a pretty big part of his branding.
I have never made it a secret that I'm actually only half orc. I am a lord to which I'm entitled, so I have become the Grey Prince, noble in my own right. Still, if I could prove who I really am and show the world that an orc can be noble in blood as well as deed, maybe, yes, you could help me.
The news of his vampirism doesn't just distress him. When it comes time for our matchup, he gives up on the will to live and just lets you kill him. It's weird that they account for this by lowering his health 100 points when they should just lower it to 1 point. That would make him go down in a single strike and would avoid the hilarious instance of it taking dozens of swings to down an opponent who isn't fighting back. And if you think it isn't difficult, it's literally just the command set AV space health space 1.
Behold, your arena grand champion, the Divine Avenger!
In the unpatched version of the game, if you kill Agranak after revealing the truth, it's counted as murder by the game. Before we take the title, we get our own custom title we get to pick from. I chose the Divine Avenger for various reasons. It's not a big deal because after you defeat the Grey Prince, all you fight are leveled monsters with the same one line every time, so being the Divine Avenger is really nothing special. Afterwards, we get an upgrade into the Raiment of Valor. The raiments are sort of a twist on the uniform idea from Morrowind, where you're required to wear a uniform to do the Imperial Legion content. You can actually get expelled from the arena if you remove your raiment in battle twice. The first time effectively functions as a free battle skip, but you won't really need it. There's a pretty big problem with the Raiment of Valor, which has to do with how armor works in Oblivion. Oblivion cut down the number of armor slots from Morrowind. Morrowind had 2 shoulders, 2 gloves, a chest plate, a shirt, greaves, pants, a skirt slot, boots, a helmet, a belt, an amulet, 2 ring slots, and a shield. Oblivion cut this down to chest, legs, boots, gloves, helmet, amulet, 2 rings, and a shield. The raiment takes this further by filling the chest, legs, boots, and glove slots. In order for it to be good, it has to make up for being armor in all of these slots. The heavy raiment has an armor value of 20. If we use the worst heavy armor in the game, the Rusty Iron set, the chest, greaves, and gloves add up to a cumulative armor rating of 18. There are no Rusty Iron boots, so we move up to regular iron boots, and then the cumulative rating of the worst heavy armor in the game is at
That'll happen.
22, compared to the heavy raiment of Valor's value of 20. It gets better. If we compare the weights of these pieces, the raiment has a weight of 72, while the combined weight of the Rusty Iron armor set and the iron boots is 63. The enchantments are similarly dubious. Fortify Personality is, without any question, worthless in Oblivion. It seems like a reward idea held over from Morrowind, like the armor is fortifying your personality because you're a celebrity kind of meme, or vice versa. But the arena awards a point of fame for each combatant you beat, and you get 3 points of disposition for every 10 points of fame, whereas you get 1 point of disposition for every 4 points of personality. So if you do the math, the actual fame rewards of the arena results in a higher disposition boost than the armor. Fortify Athletics doesn't make up for the increase in weight, and Fortify Health and Fatigue don't make up for the penalty to armor rating. Remember that we're talking about how the raiment compares to Rusty Iron gear here. A steel set has a cumulative armor rating of 27, and Blackwood gear goes up to a cumulative rating of 32. Those are both easy sets to get your hands on early, and the only downside is they're heavier at 73.5 and 94 pounds. Yes, pounds, respectively. Now, that's the heavy armor set. The light armor set fares better with an armor rating of 15 versus the light armor at 14.25. You have to get past fur and leather to chainmail armor to get better gear, so it can last a while longer, but chainmail still shows up pretty early in the game. However, it bears mentioning that without the unofficial patch, the light raiment has a health value of 100, meaning that it will break within a couple swings. After you get the raiment, you find out what the end game of the faction is. This is actually a faction where you aren't technically the leader. Who exactly that is, we never find out. But we are the Grand Champion, which in the game files is the highest rank, a rank we share with Owen, the Battle Master, but not Isabel, the Battle Matron, and our new manager. We have a manager, but don't worry, she isn't going to send letters asking why we haven't been showing up for the weekly exhibition matches. Because there's nobody to fight us. Because we apparently killed all the voluntary fighters, which is kind of weird, but sure. I guess nobody new was signing up to the arena after seeing a guy go 27-0 in 2 days. So instead, the arena is paying guys to wrangle us some monsters, and we get paid depending on the number of critters we fight at once. Don't get excited, it maxes out at 3. The monsters are leveled, and so is the gold reward we get paid, so you'll go from fighting wolves to minotaurs and wonder how the hell they captured a minotaur. It's also weekly, so you have to remember to go do the fights as well. Isn't there something important we're supposed to be doing? Our final reward is just outside, however, the Adoring Fan.
Wow, you're the Grand Champion. I saw your fight against the Great Prince. You're the best. Can I follow you around? I won't get in the way. God, you're the best. I'm going to follow you and watch you and let's go. For a guy like me, and your eyes are shining. You dare attack me? Hey, I'm warming up. You pathetic man. Hey, back off. Hey, what did you do there? Some kind of. Hey.
Most NPCs in Oblivion are essential, but not followers. If you bring one with you, you now have to worry about them getting one-shot by ogres as well. And I'd rather not. I suppose I'm somewhat expected to propose fixes for the arena instead of just leaving it broken by the side of the road. The problem is that my fixes would mean a fundamental change to the arena, which I'm usually not comfortable doing. I like to fix quests by preserving the writing, changes that would still tell the same general story. Other than a fundamental rewrite, I could propose something that keeps the same general structure, but with a lot more features to make the faction interesting. Before we start, we have to talk about the original Arena faction. Given there was an entire game about this premise, it was only logical that Bethesda wanted to celebrate the legacy of Elder Scrolls with the Arena. However, according to the cutting room floor, a bulk of the Arena content was cut in favor of saving file space. So what we got was a neutered version where the Coral Arena was transplanted to the Imperial City. Look, there's an arena in Bruma in the trailer. There's a destroyed arena in Kvatch. However, the cutting room floor then spins it into this ironic twist of fate where unnecessary file space was wasted on the former male Breton voice actor's lines, which was originally Wes Johnson and later Ralph Cosham, resulting in thousands of wasted voice lines. No sources for any of this, so
It's
now
your
I
name
have to look for
Christmas.
myself.
No, it's not.
First of all,
But,
I find it an extremely dubious claim that all
long
of Cyrano
story.
cities had
On
no
this channel,
areas
then.
that were covered by only 800 voice lines. I unpacked the BSA files, which contain the voice lines. of
Most
Oblivion
people
and the
online
Lip files, which just
just
tell
call
the
me
NPCs
Troy.
how to move their mouths, and that totaled the voice line count in the base game at 39,000, which Bethesda had to cut down from 70,000 in order to cram it all into a single DVD for the Xbox 360. Second, let's just assume that there's an entire faction that was cut for the benefit of fitting on the Xbox 360. Sounds like a good narrative to run, right? About the staple PC role-playing game compromising to work on an inferior console. Because voice lines in the file structure start with a prefix designating what content they
You have yet
correspond
to be correct.
It's easy to total up the voice lines for each faction. The Thieves and Fighters Guild both have 1,757 lines. Yeah, both of them apparently have the exact same number. Explain that, atheists, because I can't. The Mages Guild has 2,745 lines. The Dark Brotherhood has 2,526 lines. And the main quest has 3,061 lines. The arena has only 641 lines. Oh, but I've
TPL
deceived you,
isn't
because in the
TPL
Mages Guild
dead?
count, I've included the super essential narrative voice lines of the lectures given at the university that I don't think I've ever seen a
Are there
single
still
review
being
mention.
levels added?
That's
Whatever.
380
Probably not. I don't
voice
really
lines
care
right
about
there, nearly
TPL.
half of this apparently complete and fleshed out
Unless
faction.
they like, if there's an
Third
actual
and
like
finally, I
decent
can't
level
find any
made for
trace
it.
of these Wes Johnson Breton lines
but,
just sitting in the files taking up space. It's
lol.
probable he did voice some Breton lines at some point, given he was the Morrowind voice actor for the Bretons. But this idea that there are just thousands of unused voices just sitting around, when we know that Bethesda went on a tear purging unnecessary lines to shed Oblivion's water weight, is simply improbable, and needs to be proven if you're going to claim it. I mean, there are unused lines in the game, like these holiday lines, but according to Pete Hines,
something we did in Daggerfall, which is holidays. So different towns in the game will have different holidays at different times of the year, and horse armor. So you can own horses in the game, and one of our downloadable things, so you can buy different kinds of armor to put on your, you're riding around, you got all this cool Daedric armor on, you want to have something cool for your horse, so you can buy this downloadable stuff that'll let you go to different places and buy armor for your horse.
and that brings us to our final point. If there really was a complete faction and Emil Tagliarulo offered up a sacrifice, why wasn't it DLC? If Spelltones and the Orrery could make it, why couldn't the full arena faction? Sure, there was probably a concern that adding this content could threaten some people's saves, hence why
Okay,
most
but
Elder
is it
Scrolls
like
DLC takes place on the edges of maps
good?
or new areas. But let's not kid ourselves here. There was no full arena faction. The gang saw that the voice lines were getting numerous,
Like,
and
do you
Emil
have a
offered up
showcase
the
of
lesser
it?
of his 2 quest lines so that he could focus on the Dark Brotherhood. That's the story. Onto my redraft. Firstly, I would put a limit on the number of fights that happen per day. While plenty of people will tell us that they saw our fight with the Grey Prince, I'm
Okay.
sure many of the arena regulars were mad when they found out we killed all the fighters the day they decided not to go, and now it's about fighting monsters. Second, I would place more ceremony on the fights themselves. I think that was the intention, given that Owen gives you a pretty basic rundown of the fighters. The problem here is the fundamental question of whether or not Oblivion has enough combat mechanics to create a dozen or so unique gimmick fights. I think the only way my proposal works is in conjunction with a later proposal I'm going to make for improving the combat. Still, I have to stick around to fix this with the mechanics we have. Let's start with creating 3 distinct types of
I
arena
was
fights.
thinking about
Generic, promotion, and exhibition. Generic fights would work off a leveled list.
Well, yeah,
They'd be
send a
repeatable,
link.
but
I wanna
not
see the
contribute
level.
to the overall plot of the arena. Promotion fights would be the big deals, the tough enemies that determine if we get to move up the totem pole. And exhibition matches would be similar but focus on crazy event-style matchups like the Argonian prisoner match. 1 or 2 fights could work with some kind of allergy. Maybe one fight involves an offer for us to throw the match, with threats of retaliation outside the arena if we refuse. Maybe a fighter uses a special helm that makes him super powerful at the cost of weakness to paralysis or something
Troy
like
Smith
that.
Gaming?
Add some work as a
I
fight
agree.
promoter. At the low ranks, we could apprentice under the Grey Prince, and at the higher ranks, we could get our own protege to train and help climb the ranks. I would also rework the Grand Champion fight. I don't know if I would keep the Grey Prince suicide plot point. Maybe instead his fighting style just becomes crueler and vicious if you tell him the truth, among other choices. I would also try to make it a more fitting in-game challenge, like the expectation is that you have to be genuinely high level to beat him unless you figure out his critical weakness or something like that. There isn't really a lot you can do with a story that's trapped inside one location. That's why the part of the questline people usually talk about is the part that takes place outside of the arena. So we head out, looking for new work. But before we go and do the Fighters Guild, we'll need to get a horse, as for some reason they don't have a guild hall in the Imperial City like they do in every other city. Even then, only 3 halls will let you enlist in the guild, and only 2 of them have meaningful work. Horses are expensive, however, and...
We board horses, and, well, we don't actually sell horses. Anymore, that is.
Now, despite this being an inn, Snack Grobura here sent us a note informing us that we can receive a free set of her new horse armor as some harebrained promotional scheme. Yes, we're talking about horse armor, scratch it off the bingo card. Now, everyone knows horse armor is lazy and overpriced, but I don't think you understand just how lazy and overpriced horse armor was. For starters, I'm fairly confident there weren't any actual new lines of dialogue. Snack Grobura's responses seem to be patched together from other voice lines.
What can I interest you in?
How many do I have?
You've got
60.
to be kidding.
Cool.
Let's see what we've got here.
How long have I been
I mean,
streaming?
come on. Linda Carter is the wife of the guy who
I don't
runs
feel
the
like
company.
looking.
Surely you could have... The only new asset that's added are the steel and elven armor sets, and even then the difference is purely cosmetic. All the armor does is give your horse a bit more health, which, fuck, fair enough, I guess. However, if you don't own a horse and you spare at low levels, as they're pretty expensive starting at 500 gold, then Snack will throw in a free horse with the same stats as the worst horse in the game. Starting the theme with the DLC, however, is that they introduce something that messes with the base concept. Horses are a simple idea. You spend a few levels running everywhere on foot until you have some money and end up purchasing a steed to get around quicker. Makes sense, right? So throwing in a free horse minutes from the end of the tutorial is kind of a punch in the nose to that idea, although there's another free horse you can get in the main quest, like the first main quest. I don't think Bethesda really knew what they wanted from horses, and as a result they come off as an undercooked mechanic. Are they to help the player get around
Like
quicker
AMG.
because this is a game with fast travel? Running is pretty much better because you can level athletics, and if you stop to fight something, there's a long animation as you dismount. And you'll be stopping because the roads are packed with critters despite the frequent legion patrols you run into. And if you don't stop, you'll have to contend with all the critters you aggroed along the way all at once. Let's just say it wasn't long until the old nag died, even with the armor. Bethesda charged $2.50 for this DLC, which doesn't sound like a lot, but the gaming world of 2006 hated it. If they released it 2 days earlier, they could have written the whole thing off as an April Fool's joke. One thing that always bothered me was the people arguing that it wasn't alright because it was a cosmetic difference that other players couldn't see, which is technically not true. There's a negligible gameplay difference, and if other players could see you, you'd be embarrassed for wasting both real and in-game gold on horse armor.
Do you not have like a video?
That was a clip.
I don't really
from
wanna
the
open GD right now.
documentary from E3 2005. You can forgive the guy. There's a lot of wasteland in Morrowind. It's not like the first area you start in is a swamp or anything. Oh yeah, E3 2005. We'll get to that. The Fighters Guild. They're an imperial organization dedicated to organizing the mercenaries of Tamriel. There's nothing to stop non-fighters from joining the guild like mages or assassins. Their only requirement is being able to kill stuff. Faction requirements have been removed from Oblivion. In Morrowind, they were a way of gating progress so that characters had to have skills
Oh,
related
only
to
some
their
links.
faction, which
Um,
isn't as restrictive as some make it out to be. If you weren't of a fighting persuasion,
That's
or
annoying.
something, then you
I'll
could
fix
only do
that
roughly
in a
half
second.
of the Fighter Guild quests before running into the quests with rank requirements. And more would be unlocked at the impossible requirement of reaching skill level 30.
Okay, let's see. To turn off my 2 separate YouTube videos. It really wants to give me top chat instead of all chat. I don't know if there's a difference. Maybe all chat just has spam in it. I don't know how to change like the moderation settings. I feel like it should be here. Whatever, I'll figure it out later. Let me... Oh, I assume this is not it. Let me... Here. I'll do this. This is not the @ Okay. I wanted it to give me like a fucking link to the @ or something. There, yeah. Now the fucking URL worked. Yeah? Oh, this, okay. Yeah, I'm not showcasing that. Thanks though. I should turn back on my background noise. Ah, fuck. Wrong gun. What are the lists that didn't pass away? PPL, honestly, I don't really pay attention. I know ILL still exists, but I think they're mostly just doing platformer levels, at the moment. SLL died, it merged with PPLL. It's too many fucking L's, dude. Like, who decided it need to be levels lists? Can it not, like, levels list? Can it not just be, like, levels? I guess not really, but it's fucking stupid. Isn't it? I'm pretty sure it's called Impossible Platformer List. Or levels list, or whatever. So like IPLL or IPL or some shit. I think that's what theirs is called. That is true. But, like, nobody even knows what ICL is. There's another guy lurking, I'm pretty sure. He just fucking texted me on Steam. Slefo, say hi. Yeah, he might not be here anymore. It takes a while to update though. Yeah, see, I told you. Yeah, it's just lying. You know, you're talking to a person, right? Like, I don't think it counts as being alone if you're the only person in chat, considering you're still talking to someone. Feel free. I've been considering just buying Ybot because like I have a job and money now, but I don't know if I will. Oh yeah, background noise. Yeah, you should. I mean, getting a job is pretty easy. I'm trying to figure out how to fucking change the moderation settings on the stream. I don't know how to. Oh, wait. I figured it out. That says it's not blocking links though. Oh, it says URL sent in live chat are already blocked. Why? Can I turn that off? What the hell? Where do you want to work? Okay, I don't think there's a way to make it just fucking let everyone send links. It's like not a way. Okay, well, whatever. I'm giving up. You can do apparently pretty much anything besides sending links, so whatever. Mr. LFO, I have a job for you. Figure out how to get past the like auto mod for links. Like, see if you can just not have the HTTPS or fucking whatever. Like, I feel it can't be that hard. That is true. I didn't even do the thing that I tabbed out to do.
In one of the Fighter's Guild skills. You only need to maintain a high level in a faction skill if you were intent on completing the endgame quests for that faction. The benefit was, in order to do a quest like, say, finding the Staff of Magnus, you had to have a magical skill at 60, so the Staff of Magnus probably wasn't going to end up in the hands of some barbarian incapable of casting magic. I don't know how to do whispers. No, I'm aware. The Fighters Guild isn't where this rears its ugly head the worst. I mean, I didn't mention how a freshly escaped prisoner managed to beat an ex-blade in one-on-one combat in the arena, and it will get worse. Just bear in mind that as of now, the rules are made up and the ranks don't matter. The number of cities with quest givers has been reduced to 2. This is unlike Morrowind, where each major city had a guild hall with a quest giver. The free-form questing of factions from Morrowind has also been traded in for a more linear narrative. Like, say there are 2 players. One starts in Shadenhall, one starts in Anvil. Both players are going to do the same 3 quests to progress because they are literally the only quests the player is allowed to do in the Fighters Guild until those 3 are completed. Now, ideally, Oblivion should still have the advantage, as it seems like the goal was to blow Morrowind quests out of the park in terms of a direct one-on-one comparison. Less quests and more structure, but better quests. The example everyone loves is a rat problem versus exterminator.
I went to the wrong
Creating
place.
One of the most subversive and creative quests I've ever seen in an RPG.
Of course, Oblivion's rat quest is designed to be subversive.
Like, the first quest you ever do in the Anvil Fighters Guild is a parody of the first quest you ever do for the Fighters Guild in Morrowind.
Its only redeeming quality during these beginning quests is the somewhat humorous scenarios that come up every here and there. Like helping a woman protect her pet rats even though it sounded like the rats were the problem.
The first Fighters Guild quest most players will do in Morrowind is at the Balmora Guild Hall, where the player is contracted to take care of a rat problem. This involves killing 3 rats. In Oblivion, a rat problem entails going to a woman's house of a similar name to the woman in Morrowind, where it will be revealed that she has been keeping the rats as pets and she wishes to take care of whatever is killing them.
That's right. Rats in my basement, and something's been killing them. It's horrible. My poor babies. You must do something.
We kill a mountain lion and are sent with a local hunter to take out a pack of lions before killing another lion in the basement after our return. Our client then thinks that her neighbor is responsible, and we tail her to find out that she's been leaving bait near the client's basement. The goal was to draw the rats out, and coincidentally, these lions were somehow getting into this, walled city. Sure. If we tell the truth, we get a free level in speechcraft. If we lie to cover her neighbor, who didn't want anybody to get hurt, we get a free level in acrobatics. Now, in terms of the comparison, I think most people would agree which quest is more interesting. However, I think the comparison is unfair. Morrowind wanted to give a quest that new players could feasibly complete, while Oblivion was more certain that players could handle the challenge because there isn't any. Morrowind's version of this quest more adequately primed players for the faction. Oblivion poisoned the well by setting the expectation for quests to be this nuanced when they generally aren't. The next quest, The Unfortunate Shopkeeper, involves just sitting in a shop and waiting for some thieves to break in, while Morrowind's next quest
Well, I missed
involves
every
using
shot.
town to take care of some poachers holed up in the back of the mine. Morrowind sets the expectation for what it accomplishes with quests to reasonable. A simple objective where the storytelling is emergent. Go read some forum posts about how much difficulty people have with this quest and the various ways people figured out how to handle it. Oblivion sets the expectation that its quests are going to be a step up when often they aren't. The player is also told at each step how to handle the problem, so you don't get that moment where the player realizes they can chug alcohol to improve their stats in order to fight the rats. Quillweave also won't place the meat to bait the rats until after the player goes with Pinnerus on the hunt, and the choice is somewhat bizarre as speechcraft and acrobatics are not the hallmarks of a fighter. It's the illusion of a quest with depth, and it works because people like to talk about how much of a wonderful subversion this quest is. In order to go further, we have to talk about the writers. Oblivion did us the great favor of crediting every single writer as quest designer without a clue as to who is responsible for what quests. So unless the writers have since taken credit for their work, it's become nebulous who can attribute what work to. This was true of Morrowind as well, although with a smaller writing team, the writers themselves giving credit was far easier. An example then. The creators of various Doom and Thief levels are very well known. When you discuss those levels, a part of the analysis is understanding the people behind their creation. Yet people are willing to spend hours discussing Elder Scrolls quests without acknowledging the people responsible, to the point that Wikipedia credits Ted Peterson and Michael Kirkbride as the writers of Oblivion. Now, that's an easy mistake to make, and I believe there are two parties at fault here. Bethesda for not crediting developers properly, and the Elder Scrolls community for not better documenting sources. The writers shouldn't have to be like Emil Pagliarulo shouting from the rooftops that he created the Dark Brotherhood questline. But in the same vein, he often doesn't bring up that he's also responsible for the Arena questline, a fact that almost fell into obscurity if not for the Fallout Wiki's own archive linking to a Gamasutra article. Yes, the Fallout Wiki did more to document an Elder Scrolls quest designer than the Elder Scrolls wikis did. Bruce Nesmith's work on the Thieves Guild would have been missed if not for a Ken Ralston interview mentioning the fact offhandedly. Brian Chapin worked on the Mages Guild, and Kurt Coleman worked on the main quest, and Mark Nelson worked on the Fighters Guild, although I can only say that one with 80% certainty. In fact, I can't really say with any certainty that I won't be proven wrong on at least one of these accounts. I mean, I only figured out that Nelson worked on the Fighters Guild from the credits section of a mod on the Nexus. The nature of development at Bethesda as well makes it difficult to say just one person worked on each questline. It's more than likely multiple team members contributed to each questline, with one designer acting as the lead for that questline rather than as sole developer. But it's the best we have unless some of these developers pull a Douglas Goodall and break down who was responsible for what quests. Speaking of, Morrowind had 10 factions you could join in the conventional sense of starting at rank 1 and progressing to rank 9. The Fighters, Mages, and Thieves Guilds, the Imperial Legion and Cult, Great Houses Halalu, Redoran, and Telvanni, as well as the Tribunal Temple and Morag Tong. And 8 of those factions had the same writer. Now we have half as many factions, most of which have exclusive writers. So the transition from quantity of Morrowind to quality of Oblivion should be apparent by default, and yet it isn't, as you'll see. Before you get ahead of yourself and leave comments about fast travel, I implore you to actually listen and not just assume an argument from my position. Once you complete the 2 quests in Anvil, you now have to go to Shadenhall, or vice versa if you started in Shadenhall. This is a fantastic opportunity to discuss fast travel and the world of Oblivion. If we look at a map, we can see that we start the game here, near the Imperial City. We then went to Anvil, which is here in the southwest corner of the playable area. And now we have to go here to Shadenhall in the northeast to progress. A common defense of fast travel goes something like this.
If you don't like it, just don't use it.
Ralston and Nelson, who were anti-fast travel during Oblivion's development, lost the fight with Todd Howard under similar logic. And sure, if you don't use fast travel in Oblivion, then it's just like Morrowind. Except it isn't. For one, Mark and Recall have been removed, likely because there are more than a couple spots breaking the sequence and stripping of the player could simply tell in areas in Morrowind, such as the final boss area of the main quest, the Clockwork City of Tribunal, and the maze of the Blood Moon expansion. Now, you could say it would break immersion to prevent the player from teleporting out of certain traps in Oblivion. After all, the examples I gave tended to involve some powerful magic to stop the player, and that's fair. Maybe we could introduce some kind of Psijic suppressant crystals that explain why you can't teleport in some areas. The downside is instead the immersion-shattering realization that the wizards and mages of Tamriel willingly gave up the ability to teleport, and nobody, especially not any evil mages present in this game, were willing to break the law for the useful power of actual teleportation, let alone in emergencies. I bet having a mark set at Cloud Ruler Temple would have been really useful to the Emperor. The other reason Mark and Recall, as well as the intervention spells, were likely removed was that the developers thought they were unnecessary. Because there's fast travel now, so they added a system that they intended to be optional for more hardcore fans, and then removed a solution that those same hardcore fans used. Fine, we'll hire a Silk Strider, or a carriage, or a boat to transport us. Well, there aren't any, because there's fast travel, so it would be unnecessary. See the problem here? I honestly believe most of the proponents of the just don't use it argument are people who haven't played Morrowind and so are blissfully unaware of the diegetic travel options of that game. They just hear that it didn't have fast travel and assume that everyone must have just walked everywhere. Something people seem to get caught on during my Morrowind discussion of this topic is time management. If people are busy in their lives, then they don't have the time to spend on hours of travel and navigation. I think people are missing something important, however, which is that time is self-equivalent. 2 hours of playtime is still 2 hours of playtime, whether you spend that time traveling or not. Is it really more satisfying to get 10 generic quests done with fast travel in the same time you could have spent adventuring the countryside? That will come down to people's subjective preference and taste, but the point of my Morrowind video is that there are people who have a taste for Morrowind who aren't being catered to. And it's not even impossible that Elder Scrolls could cater to both sides. Literally, one checkbox in the menu in the design philosophy that doesn't rely on fast travel is all it takes to make Elder Scrolls more inclusive for everyone. Instead, and we're quoting Gavin Carter,
adding in tricks, these things are features the fan community has requested again and again.
Rather than everyone getting what they wanted, features were slashed in favor of appealing to a vocal minority. Well, if you disagree and don't like microtransactions in your Fallout games, you can no longer complain. Because these are things the fan community has requested again and again to eliminate the tedium of scavenging environments. Tamriel isn't a big place post-Morrowind, and the individual provinces are especially small. The decision was made to keep the mainland games to the scale of Vardenfell, which is honestly just weird to me. Like, would anyone have been playing the Spirit over twice the scale of Vardenfell besides the world designers? Which is why it only takes 3 hours to fast travel from Anvil to the Imperial City. It's not even that big a deal to really make the world that much bigger because most of it was just procedurally generated and then decorated with Speed Tree. Hell, there's a quest where you track down a merchant who does a round of Bravil, Skingrad, Bruma, and Leowen each week, and when a guard from outside the Imperial City comments that he attended our supposedly legendary fight with the Grey Prince, yeah, I can believe that, but I shouldn't. See, the trick you're supposed to pull is to make the world feel bigger than it actually is. Morrowind may only have a population of around 2,600, and you might not see merchants traveling the world, or people sleeping, or even adequate housing for every single person. But it achieves a feeling of being even bigger than it really is by showing the player how it is that people get around, and by never breaking the illusion of Vardenfell's actual size. These provinces are supposed to be the size of real-life countries, but in reality they're smaller than real-life cities. That's a limitation of handcrafting the world, and the key to making it work is not breaking the scale. People in Bruma shouldn't be wearing the same clothes as people in Leowen, not only for cultural but climatic reasons. Morrowind gave people in different regions different styles of clothing and conversation, and were able to do that because of Morrowind's more advanced gear system as well as text-based dialogue. There are, however, non-immersion reasons I support a lack of fast travel. The first is that it's a system the player now has to master. If you're able to select a point on the map and click accept, you've mastered travel in Oblivion. Navigation and map knowledge are the difference between a player who knows where they're going and a lost player in Morrowind. You'll never wonder if you're on the right road to Skingrad if you always just fast travel to the city. You'll never be tempted to explore the dungeon on the side of the orange road you pass every time you travel from Coral to Bruma. And the consequences for not properly planning out your quest will never be felt if you can always just teleport back to your base of operations. In the Morrowind video, I told the story of an adventure I went on where I had to end up fighting a dangerous vampire that I could barely defeat. On the flip side is the Oblivion version of that story where I ran out of health potions, so I just left the cave, teleported home, crafted more, and then teleported back and continued the fight like nothing had happened. If the goal of the gameplay formula is to incentivize exploration, to allow each player to tell a unique story by the simple means of which path they choose to navigate the world, then you have failed from the start by unlocking every city by default. That mistake has since been corrected, but that does not alleviate the fact that once you unlock a point in the middle of nowhere, that point can now serve as a nexus of fast travel. If you travel to Desolate Mine on foot, you better remember that journey, because every time you fast travel to Desolate Mine to get to other places near it, you miss out. This is Coomer, my friend's character from our playtime in TES 3MP. Here, put those on.
Jesus Christ.
See, I can explain all the efficient ways to navigate the world, but my friend who's never played Morrowind before doesn't know that the
getting
Mage's Guild
6
will take you from
more.
Caldera to Ald'ruhn. So we walked.
Actually,
and
no.
We got lost a little, but we found our way. It was a proper adventure. Well, if you were to somehow play more Oblivion together, all Coomer has to
I think
do
we're
is
getting
click
4
on
more.
Ald'ruhn and hit accept. See, part of what makes Morrowind work is that the map tells us almost nothing beyond the basic geography of Vardenfell. It's actually pretty cool gradually filling in the map because you'll see exactly where you've been. Oblivion's
3
map,
more now.
on the flip side, shows you the cities and roads by default. Oblivion's map is also tied to the Oblivion UI, which is a tangent I'll have to set aside for now, but since Oblivion's UI can't be scaled or zoomed out, you can't actually see the entire map of Cyrodiil like you can Vardenfell. Because if you could, you would notice how every faction is extremely reliant on fast travel in Oblivion. Rather than having halls in each city that give contracts local to that area, guild halls in Oblivion represent all of Cyrodiil, which becomes apparent at the 4th quest. The 3rd quest in Shadenhall has us passing out gear to some Fighters Guild members and then trying to keep them alive. Pro tip, turn down the difficulty every time someone gives you someone to protect unless you really like loading screens. But, well, after Shadenhall, we're directed to speak to the Guildmaster.
You're needed in Coral. Report to Velena Danton. She's got some duties for you to take care of.
So we journey from Shadenhall across Cyrodiil to Coral to be told to speak with Modron Orion.
I would like you to speak with Modron.
Can you
Orion.
please kill
He will
yourself?
assign you any duties that are currently pending.
To be told again to cross Cyrodiil down to Skingrad to deal with a guild member's delinquent contract. Once that's taken care of, it's up to Coral to then be sent down to Leowen in the opposite corner of the map, then back up to Coral only to be told to get another job from either Anvil or Shadenhall. This is part of the reason it feels like Cyrodiil lacks any distinct culture no matter what part of the world you're in. Now I want to be clear here, yes, there are reasons that the Fighters Guild Master sends you around not to take care of guild business. That isn't unreasonable, and there were Morrowind quests that had you crossing the map frequently. The difference is that if you play without fast travel, you can still get around fast in Morrowind, whereas if you play without fast travel in Oblivion, you either rush to get Shadowmere or use Fortify Speed and run. If we're going to be centralizing our guild operations, could we at least start hiring couriers to send orders instead of getting all of our instructions in person? Let's face the facts here. Most of the quests in Oblivion are just Morrowind quests with better scripting and voice acting. Talk to a lady and get her 5 portions of ectoplasm so that she signs an exclusivity deal with the Fighters Guild. The difference is that Oblivion doesn't have the mechanical intrigue of Morrowind, so getting ectoplasm isn't a big deal because once I have it, I can just teleport home. So why include fast travel? Well, Todd knew best. The 2006 release date and the audience that Todd Howard was going for needed fast travel. PC was his core market, and he knew they would buy the game no matter what. It was selling the idea of a role-playing game to the console plebeians that mattered. Hey man, just got back from Coral after
I should make an
long
Oblivion
mission delay.
showcase and call
Heard
it
you got
that.
a contract for me?
I've got another contract
Wouldn't even make
for you,
sense.
Pete. I assume you won't embarrass yourself. It's from Vienna Amelian at the Water's Edge settlement. She needs something retrieved from her ancestral tomb. Try not to muck it up.
Oh, sure. Let me just consult the map of where that is, and oh, you've got to be So yeah, we're back on the road again. I guess I should mention that I'm not following any kind of self-imposed travel rule for Oblivion. I tried
Here,
to
you know,
figure
we're
out
gonna
the
do a
road at least
single
once, but most
farm.
of the game I just fast traveled to out of pocket if we want to keep our dad's unique light chest piece and sword. Then we travel back up to Shadenhall to then be directed across Cyrodiil to Anvil for our next quest to take out a gang of thieves.
This
You'll
one
have
I'm
these
not
quests
looking
to
forward to
complete your
actively
quests. It's literally
farming
just
because
go
it
to caves,
takes
kill targets,
you
get
have to
some
run
loot
through like
items.
several
The
maps
only
to
thing
get
that's
to it.
notable about the Bosmer quest is that Maglir, the guy who
Let me
did
put
the
on
Hell's
the-
contract back at Skingrad, is joining us for this mission.
I think
You
I
have
think
the
I need to
choice
actually
either
go,
rat him out or keep his
like unlock
secret.
him.
And it apparently doesn't come up during this outing, which is strange because you have to complete the Skingrad job to get this quest. After this, we go back up to Coral for another mission from Orion.
Oh right, you need
Orion,
to. I
if
think you
aren't
need to do
aware,
this
is a
first.
reference
Okay,
to a
never mind. We're
Malakath
not doing
quest
that.
in Morrowind where you kill a man with a similar name who was supposedly the last of his line. But in classic Malakath fashion, this wasn't
That's
the case,
crazy.
and apparently the super powerful helm of Orion
Better
the
end
Far
stream
was returned to
immediately.
Modron out of goodwill.